From the newsrooms of the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, this is Please Explain. I'm Julia Carr-Katzel. It's Monday, July 3. Taylor Swift is one of the most popular and critically acclaimed artists of her generation, winning over the hearts and minds of fans around the world with relatable and catchy lyrics about love, feminism, and nasty breakups. Now, the 12-time Grammy Award winner is set to visit our shores for the first time in more than 5 years. And Swifitie mania is well and truly upon us, with millions of Australians trying last week to secure a ticket at her shows in Sydney and Melbourne. The incredible demand to see Taylor Swift has led to a political debate in Canberra over where she's playing and sparked a national debate about the economic impact of her tour. So what exactly does Australia's obsession with Swift say about us? Today, culture editor Osman Faruqi on how a Taylor Swift concert can help us understand the state of our nation. Osman, the Taylor Swift tour has been dominating headlines in Australia over the last couple of weeks. And at Please Explain, where we mostly focus on news and current affairs, we wondered, is there an episode for us in this topic? So we decided to call you up to ask your opinion. And you said there definitely is. So why is that?
So, Julia, I've covered a lot of concerts and I've been lucky enough to go to a lot of concerts in this country as well. And honestly, I've never seen anything like what we're seeing right now with this Taylor Swift tour. The interest from Australians is enormous. More than 4 million people tried to buy tickets to her show. And the tour's also sparked political debate in Canberra, where politicians are arguing about where she's playing and, more importantly, where she's not playing. And there's even been claims that her tour could fuel inflation and have a broad economic impact on Australia. So I think, Julia, even if you're not a fan of Taylor Swift, there is so much to be paying attention to with this upcoming tour.
And just before we get into that, let's take a step back. And for the uninitiated among us, what should we know about Taylor Swift? I will admit I don't fall into that category. I used to be a massive fan and may have even fainted at one of her concerts. But for those outside that bubble, why does she generate so much interest?
So Taylor Swift is undeniably the biggest pop star on the planet right now, and she has been for quite a while.
This is one of the first songs that I ever wrote, and I wrote it when I was 12, and I'm really glad that it gets to be on
She
the album.
started out as a country artist and really reached mainstream success when she pivoted to pop. She's since experimented with different genres like dance, electronic. Lately, she's been in the indie folk space. Her albums have been enormously popular. They've received huge critical acclaim, and she's considered, rightly, I think, to be one of the best songwriters of her generation.
Right. And the Grammy goes to Folklore, Taylor Swift!
She's also seen as a role model, particularly for young women.
Unpredictable and cussed, like women, you know?
Oh, we don't want to do that.
And she's also shaken up how artists work within the music industry. She very famously, a couple of years ago, led a campaign to reclaim the masters of her original recordings. That's basically the copyright to her music. She said that she, as the artist, wanted to own that and make money from it and decide what it was licensed for, and not have a man who ran her old label be able to dictate where her songs would go and who made money off them.
Sold to somebody else, and so I just figured I was the one who made this music first. I can just make it again.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing.
That was an extremely significant turning point for the music industry and led to a much bigger conversation about the right of artists to own the music that they create.
When something says in parentheses Taylor's version next to it, that means I own it, which is exciting.
And this particular tour is a massive deal because it's her first one in over 5 years. It's called the Eras Tour because it's a retrospective on her entire discography and her entire 15 years as a recording artist. So if you're a new fan or you're an old fan of Taylor Swift's, you are very excited for this tour. And when she announced that it was going to be coming to Australia, there was huge excitement.
Yeah, so Oz, tell me about that excitement. What exactly has the reaction been?
So firstly, when the tour was announced, there was just US dates and everyone lost their minds. Ticketing websites crashed. It led to an investigation by the Department of Justice in the US to look at whether or not the music industry was fit for purpose because it couldn't handle a Taylor Swift tour. Some tickets were on sale in secondhand markets for over $40,000 US. Like, this was an enormous deal for everyone in the music industry, the music world, fans and industry figures alike. Back here in Australia, people were obviously very concerned that she had not announced any Australian dates. So a lot of Taylor Swift fans actually went over to the US and took part in her concerts over there. A couple of weeks ago, she finally announced that she was coming to Australia. She was going to play 2 dates in Melbourne at the MCG and 3 dates in Sydney at Acclaim Stadium.
Big day for the Swifties today. Tickets for Taylor Swift's Australian tour.
Tickets for the Aussie leg of her tour are hot property.
Swift fans will this morning fight it out in an open battle royale when Frontier Touring pre-sale goes live.
And as you'd expect, Taylor Swift fans lost their collective minds.
Repeat after me. I am worthy of experiencing the magic of Taylor Swift's concert. The universe conspires to bring me to the front row.
I just lit my Taylor Swift candle, so may the gods be with you.
Tickets for those concerts went on sale last week, and the ticketing demand broke records for an Australian concert. More than 4 million Australians tried to buy tickets.
I'm on TikTok. Mine's not even doing
going
anything.
on?
Oh my god. Why
I can't get to the next
refreshing?
page.
It's like not even.
I'm going for
taking
Saturday,
into
you're
account.
going for Sunday.
I think you just do it.
It's 1 minute. Whatever you do, don't refresh anything, just click.
There was such demand when the first round of pre-sales went on offer on Monday and Wednesday that Frontier Touring, the touring company, announced additional dates. So she would be playing another day in Melbourne at the MCG and another day in Sydney at Acclaim Stadium. All of the final tickets went on sale last Friday. They sold out very, very, very fast.
That was the most stressful thing I've ever gone through, but I got tickets.
Okay, so I just got tickets for Taylor Swift Saturday.
So I just
Sydney
got
show.
Taylor Swift Era Tour's tickets in Sydney. I got a reserve. I'm so fucking
We got it, Taylor Swift. Yeah. Oh, I'm so happy.
And it's too early to tell because we don't have exact numbers yet, but it looks like it will be one of the biggest tours in Australian history.
Okay, and it does seem like everyone wants a bit of Taylor. You said before that some politicians have even weighed in on the debate as well. Can you tell me about that?
Well, one of the biggest and most long-term political fans of Taylor Swift is, of course, the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. On Please Explain, just last Friday, he was talking about his love of Taylor Swift and how keen he is to try and get tickets to see her show.
The thing about Taylor Swift is I think that she is a great role model. Shake It Off is a feminist anthem, and her later
But
material...
it isn't just Albanese who is talking about Taylor Swift. In Parliament a couple of weeks ago, we saw politicians from cities where she's not performing, particularly Brisbane and Perth, get up and implore her to come and do shows for their constituents.
Today, I'm talking to you about Taylor Swift. I'm a huge Taylor Swift
Liberal MP in Queensland, Andrew Wallace, literally begged Taylor Swift to come and perform in Brisbane. And
Taylor, I'm asking you, I'm begging you, I'm pleading with you. I'll get down on my knees if I have to. Please come to Queensland. I've spent many years driving
WA Labor MP Patrick Gorman issued a very similar kind of plea. And I think what that shows is that this is not just a story about music and about fans wanting to see their favourite artist. The enormous interest in Taylor and in this tour in particular means that politicians want to be seen to be doing everything they can to try and get her to visit their constituents.
And she's not playing in New Zealand, so New Zealanders will have to fly over as well.
I mean, that's right. That's another 5 million people trying to get these tickets. And there's been some very funny comments from fans begging state premiers to close their borders like they did during COVID and keep Sydney tickets for Sydney-siders and keep Melbourne tickets for Melburnians.
Yeah. And one of the consequences of that intense demand has been ticket scalping on third-party platforms and elsewhere. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, ticket scalping's been a long-term problem across all sorts of concerts in Australia. It leads to enormous price gouging as people scoop up tickets on the first initial ticketing websites and then sell them at huge markups because there is this huge demand. Taylor Swift tickets, for example, were selling for over $2,500 after the first pre-sales went live. That triggered a conversation about whether we need to have national anti-ticket scalping laws to protect people in this sort of situation. We actually do have ticket scalping laws in different states. They kind of vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. New South Wales and Victoria, which are the most relevant states because that's where this tour is, have pretty good anti-scalping laws. In Victoria, a state government decision can deem something a major event, which means that tickets can't be sold for more than 10% above the initial value. Now, that state government did make a decision last Tuesday to deem Taylor Swift a major event and limit the prices that secondhand tickets could be sold at. The New South Wales situation is slightly more complicated. The current Labor government has previously criticised those laws when they were in opposition and said there were huge loopholes around them. They mainly are about cracking down on advertising, not so much the actual sale that happens between a third-party reseller and a potential fan. So there's a debate happening in New South Wales right now about whether anti-scalping laws need to be tightened further, which in and of itself is quite fascinating. If Taylor Swift's concert leads to law reform in Australia, it's a pretty big deal from her perspective.
Yeah, and not just law reform. We might see a broader economic impact as well. I know Beyonce was blamed for fueling inflation in Sweden following her shows there a few months ago. Should we be concerned?
It's actually a really interesting question because we have seen evidence, as you mentioned, Beyonce's concerts in Sweden and Taylor Swift's tour in the US, particularly in Nashville, like one of the cities that she is most beloved in because of her country roots, spikes and surges in the price of things like hotel accommodation, Airbnbs, travel costs, even food costs, and of course clothing, because so many fans want to buy special outfits to wear to Taylor Swift shows. So that has led to a spike in the cost of all sorts of different goods in those cities. And there is concern from some economic analysts that the same thing could happen in Australia. And why that matters right now is because we're in the midst of a pretty significant inflationary period. So there's a concern that these price hikes might feed into that and might lead the Reserve Bank to further tighten interest rates, which has its own economic consequences as well. Now, other economists say, look, there's no need to lose our minds about this. This is really something that occurs over the period of a week. It's unlikely to have ongoing big impacts, even if it will still hurt Swift fans as they try to book a hotel or try and get flights to Melbourne or Sydney. There are even some economists who say that by the time this concert is actually happening in February next year, the economy is expected to have slowed down significantly. So this might be quite a good thing to have a lot of discretionary spending going on. But again, Julia, I think it's just so interesting that this artist has not just sparked a conversation in Canberra about the politics of where she's playing and around the price of tickets, but also among economists around the broader economic impact in this country.
She has so much power. So Oz, just finally, what does this say about Australians? The incredible demand for tickets, the pleas from politicians, the fear of economic impact. What does this say about Australians and our love for Swift?
Like I said at the start of our conversation, Julia, I haven't seen anything like this before. And even though I am a fan of Taylor Swift and I've known for a while that she's extremely popular, I still wasn't expecting this level of interest and engagement and desire from so many millions of people. And I think it says a couple of things. I think it is interesting. We mentioned the inflationary period that we're in. We mentioned that the Reserve Bank's interest rate hikes are, having an impact in terms of households and their discretionary spending. I think it's really interesting that so many people are willing to fork out hundreds of dollars, in some cases, upwards of $1,000 for tickets to see Taylor Swift. And perhaps that points to this paradox of a alleged cost of living crisis where people are tightening their belts and their spending, but are willing to fork out so much money to see a pop star, which is, a classic example of discretionary spending. But I think on the other hand, it says that Australians want to have fun and they're allowed to have fun, and they love Taylor Swift, they love live music, they love going to see big spectacular shows like this, and they're willing to make sacrifices to do so, whether that's getting up early to try and get on the website and buy tickets, whether that's spreading the workload out amongst their friends, whether that's, begging and borrowing for accommodation and trying to borrow cars to drive around the country to get to those shows, or whether it's, just getting a credit card and racking up debt because you're so keen to see your favorite star. They're willing to make those sacrifices, and I think amidst all the economic uncertainty and the global uncertainty and the confusion that grips all of us, I feel like every day and every week, it's really just quite nice to see lots of people say the most important thing for me right now in life is trying to go and see a show that will make me really happy and hang out with a bunch of awesome people who just love pop music. And I think that is a really nice and beautiful concept that we should just acknowledge and accept.
I agree. Well summarised, Oz. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Julia.
Today's episode of Please Explain was produced by me, Julia Carcatzel. Our executive producer is Ruby Schwartz. Please Explain is a production of The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald. If you enjoy the show and want more of our journalism, subscribe to our newspapers today. It's the best way to support what we do. Search The Age or smh.com.au/subscribe. I'm Julia Carcatzel. This is Please Explain. Thanks for listening.